Tonight, the Dallas Stars are set to host the Toronto Maple Leafs in what should be one of the best matchups in the National Hockey League this week. And on today's episode, I'll get you prepared with everything you need to know before this big game. We'll talk about Jason Robertson and Mitch Marner and their respective point streaks and the history being made in this matchup. We'll also talk about the Leafs as a whole, take a look at their roster, and see what they've been up to since these teams last met at the beginning of the season. And I'll give you my keys to the game and talk about why this game is very, very important, and maybe more important than other games the Stars will play this season against Eastern Conference opponents. All of that coming up on this Tuesday edition of Locked On Stars.
You're Locked On Stars, your daily podcast on the Dallas Stars. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Howdy, Stars fans. Welcome back to the Locked On Stars podcast, the only daily podcast covering the Dallas Stars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Dane Lewis, your local expert on all things Dallas Stars hockey, coming to you on this Tuesday, December 6th. And whether this is your first time here or you are a recurring listener of the show, thank you for stopping by and making Locked On Stars your first listen of the day. Be sure to subscribe to the show on YouTube or follow us on your favorite podcasting platform. We are free and available no matter where or how you may choose to listen. And you can also find us on social media at Locked On Stars on both Instagram and Twitter. And you can also find my personal Twitter account at Dane_Lewis. Now, without any further hesitation, let's jump into today's episode and talk about a pretty important game, and a game that I personally am very excited to watch unfold tonight. The Stars still in the middle of their 5-game homestand, and they welcome the Toronto Maple Leafs to town tonight. The next 3 games will be against Atlantic Division opponents, the Leafs, the Senators, and the Red Wings, all coming throughout the remainder of this week and into the weekend. And of course, there's a lot of different storylines and a lot of different angles that you could approach this game. But I mean, it goes without saying, really, although I'm about to talk about it here for the next 7 to 8 minutes or so, that the biggest storyline going into this game, without a doubt, is the point streak battle. Jason Robertson of the Dallas Stars enters this game riding an 18-game point streak. And during that point streak, he has racked up 21 goals, 13 assists, and 34 points in total. Currently only 2 games away from tying the franchise record. The record currently belongs to Brian Bellows, who, again, had a 20-game point streak back during the 1985-1986 season. The streak lasted from January 11th, 1986 until February 21st, 1986, back when the Dallas Stars didn't exist yet. It was still the Minnesota North Stars. And during that streak, just a little fun fact, Brian Bellows had 11 goals and 18 assists, totaling 29 points during that impressive 20-game point streak that has set the franchise record for the Stars organization. And on the other end of this matchup, you have Leafs winger Mitch Marner, who comes into this game riding a 19-game point streak. It is actually a new Toronto record. Marner scored a goal in their last game against the Tampa Bay Lightning, and that set the new record in the Maple Leafs organization for the longest point streak by a player. During this point streak, Marner has racked up 9 goals, 17 assists, 26 points in total. So both of these players have been outstanding for their teams as of late, and Marner has been good and deserves a lot of credit for what he's done. But, I mean, you just look at the production numbers, and it goes to prove even more how ridiculous Jason Robertson has been this season for the Stars and just across the NHL, continuing to just put up video game numbers, mind-blowing numbers. I mean, 21 goals during this point streak. He still leads the league in goals, was the first player to 20 goals this season. I mean, it's just absolutely unreal what he's been doing over this point streak, and hopefully it doesn't stop anytime soon. I mean, this is going to be very entertaining to see how both of these players play, what they do in this game, the impact that they make on the outcome. And I certainly do hope that Jason Robertson is able to extend his streak tonight, because he has a legitimate shot to set a franchise record and potentially, get past this 20-game point streak that has been the standard in this organization since the mid-1980s. And this is just a nice little cherry on top of the fact that this is already a really good matchup featuring 2 very good teams that are likely going to be in the playoffs. that likely could make deep runs in the playoffs. Just makes it very, very intriguing to watch the teams as a whole, but then also look at this individual matchup of Robertson versus Mitch Marner. And a lot of other people within the Stars media are taking notice of this as well. Josh Bogorad, play-by-play commentator for the Dallas Stars on the radio and TV, had a very interesting tweet on Monday morning. He said, per NHL stats, there has never been a game where two players riding point streaks of 18-plus games face each other. Mitch Marner has a 19-game point streak. Jason Robertson has an 18-game point streak. Leafs versus Stars tomorrow night. And he tweeted that again on Monday. So that game is happening tonight. And that's just absolutely insane, especially given, the amount of offense that's been in this league since its inception way, way back when. But I mean, to see two players playing at an extremely high level, going head to head in a matchup of two really good teams is just going to be an absolute treat. The eyes of the NHL world are going to be on this game. You take a look at the slate of games for Tuesday in the NHL. There's a few other decent ones out there, but this is by far, I think, the best and most intriguing matchup just from a team standpoint. And then you factor in this point streak battle as well. And it's just going to be so delightful to watch. I mean, these are two of the best young superstar players in this league. Mitch Marner, only 25 years old. And of course, we all know Jason Robertson, only 23 years old. So both of these guys, Marner may be already in his prime at 25, and Jason Robertson, I think, just at the beginning of his prime. I mean, two players who are really starting to find their groove and guys that are likely going to be in similar situations like this for the rest of their careers. Guys that are going to rack up a ton of goals and a ton of points for their respective clubs over probably the next 10 seasons or so. And this, not the first time that they've gone up against each other, but the first time that they've gone up against each other with stakes like this. So it's going to be an absolute madhouse at the AAC tonight. Should be a fun, high-energy game, I imagine. There will be a ton of Leafs fans there. I know that they just have fans all over the place. And if my memory serves me correct, even the last time they played in Dallas when Austin Matthews made history with his 60th goal, I remember a lot of Leafs fans being in the building there. But I know that there will be even more Dallas Stars fans there, and they are going to be locked in and ready to watch this game unfold. Should be a thrilling game, both teams playing at a high level, and both of these individual players playing at an even higher level. Jason Robertson, Mitch Marner, tonight at the American Airlines Center. Well, we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we will continue to talk about tonight's matchup, and we'll take a moment and take a look at this Toronto Maple Leafs team, because things looking a little bit different for them since the last time these teams met together in the early stages of the NHL season. More on the Toronto Maple Leafs right after this. Today's episode of Locked On Stars is brought to you by our friends at SimpliSafe. At Locked On Stars, we believe home should be where you and your family feel safest, especially around the holidays. This season, you can give yourself and your family the gift of peace and protection with the #1 rated home security system, SimpliSafe. And right now, SimpliSafe is offering listeners 40% off a new security system. But don't put this off. In an emergency, 24/7 professional monitoring agents use Fast Protect technology exclusively from SimpliSafe to capture critical evidence and verify that the threat is real, so you can get higher priority police response. Don't miss your chance to save big on my favorite security system. You can get 40% off any new system at SimpliSafe.com/LockedOnNHL today. That's SimpliSafe.com/LockedOnNHL. There's no safe like SimpliSafe. I want to thank you again for making Locked On Stars your first listen of the day. Remember to subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. Follow on your favorite podcasting platform. Let's continue to talk about tonight's premier matchup in the NHL. The Stars hosting the Toronto Maple Leafs for their second and final meeting of the season. Now let's take a minute and talk about this Maple Leafs team. We've talked about Mitch Marner. He is absolutely a player to watch in this game. He's going to be a threat. He's going to get his looks at the net and going to be doing what he can to set up his teammates and try to get those assists. But there are plenty of other weapons on this team, as Stars fans know good and well, just as well as any other team in the NHL that goes up against the Maple Leafs. There's a guy, maybe you've heard of him, Austin Matthews was the Rocket Richard winner last season, the Hart Trophy winner last season. He's playing very well, 12 goals, 16 assists, 28 points on the season. William Nylander, 14 goals for a team leading for the Toronto Maple Leafs, 12 assists, 26 points in total. The captain, John Tavares, 12 goals, 14 assists, also 26 points on the season. And this team also features a few players who are siblings of Dallas Stars players. Of course, Nick Robertson, 2 goals, 3 assists, and 5 points in 13 games played for the Leafs this season. And I'm sure many of you remember both of those goals coming against the Dallas Stars back in October. No goals since then for the younger Robertson brother. And then Jamie Benn's brother, also on the Toronto Maple Leafs, although I don't think we will be seeing him in this game. 1 goal, 1 assist on the season, but has not played since November 23rd against the New Jersey Devils, suffering an injury there. And it's not just Jordy Ben when you talk about injuries with this team. This Toronto Maple Leafs team has dealt with a plethora of injuries, especially along their blue line. You, of course, have the aforementioned Jordy Ben, but you also have Morgan Riley, who is currently on LTIR with a knee injury. TJ Brody has an injured oblique, and from what I could find, doesn't seem that he's going to be playing in this game. Jake Muzzin is out for a long time with a spine injury. Carl Dahlstrom is also missing time for this Maple Leafs team. And I think that's a huge reason why this Leafs team at times feels a little bit up and down with the way they play, because clearly they have all the talent in the world on the offensive front. They have some of the best forwards in the league, one of the best goal scorers in Austin Matthews, and you pair that with Nylander, you pair that with Mitch Marner, Michael Bunting. They certainly do have a good amount of talent offensively, but really where this team has holes is currently on their blue line, with all of the guys currently out, and the goaltending situation also worth keeping an eye on because there's been some injuries on that front as well. Starting goalie Ilya Samsonov is back now after missing a few weeks with a knee injury. He played in their most recent I believe actually against the San Jose Sharks he made his return a couple games ago for this Toronto Maple Leafs team. Samsonov has a 7-2-0 record with a 2.09 goals against average and a .924 save percentage, while backup Matt Murray has a 5-1-2 record with a 2.63 and .921 save percentage. So similar numbers for both these guys, and both of them have played a similar amount of games, but Murray having to take on a little bit more of the load while Samsonov was recovering from injury. But it seems like Samsonov is back now, and from everything I can tell, he seems to be the guy that Toronto wants to have as their number one player. So I would imagine that that's who we are going to see in net tonight, if I were to just take a guess. That they're going to want their best player in between the pipes to try to defend this armada of very talented offensive weapons that the Stars are going to put on the ice. But you look at all these injuries and you look at the obstacles that this Leafs team has faced this season, yet despite all that, they're still finding ways to win games and still have found a way to be a top 3 team in the Eastern Conference. They as a team are currently riding an 11-game point streak. They have not lost in regulation since November 11th against the Pittsburgh Penguins, and they actually have, quote-unquote, lost their most recent game on Saturday in overtime at Tampa Bay. But before that, they had won 5 straight games, and 4 of those were road games, and they were road games against good teams, the Devils, the Wild, the Penguins, and the Red Wings. None of those are easy opponents to go up against this season, and they won all of those games on the road before returning home for a game with the San Jose Sharks, a game that you would expect them to win, and they did just that. But then they lose in overtime to the Tampa Bay Lightning, who they just continue to not be able to shake after losing to them in the playoffs last season. So this team kind of got off to a weird, rocky start, but they really seem to have found some of their footing despite a lot of adversity, especially when it comes to health on the team. Missing a lot of key players along that blue line, but the talent on offense and pretty solid goaltending has really propelled them to being one of the best teams in the conference and second in their division, only behind the Boston Bruins, who are maybe the best team in the Eastern Conference. It's either them, the Devils, and then the Maple Leafs are right there behind them in the same conversation. So that's just a testament to how good this Toronto Maple Leafs team is. Even if they have guys missing from the lineup, they have a plethora of other talented skaters that can get the job done and can be a threat from anywhere on the ice. So even if there are players missing from the lineup for Toronto, we cannot take this team lightly. And this is going to be a very challenging game for the Stars, even if it is in the friendly confines of their home building. Well, we're going to take one more quick break, but when we come back, we will close out my thoughts on this game against the Toronto Maple Leafs and talk about why this game is so important, not just from a wins and loss standpoint, but also from a respect standpoint. More on that right after this. All right, we're closing out this Tuesday game day episode of Locked on Stars, talking about this matchup, the Stars hosting the Toronto Maple Leafs. And this is an absolutely huge game for the Stars. A win against a strong Eastern Conference opponent would go very, very far for them and would affirm how good many people, including myself and many others that follow the Stars, think that they are. There's a lot of belief that this is a very good team that can not only clinch a playoff berth, but can clinch a pretty high playoff berth and can go a pretty far distance in the postseason. Not just 7 games in the first round. The belief is that this team at their best can go 2-3 rounds deep, if not farther. And a win here against the Toronto Maple Leafs at home would do a lot, I think, for the morale of the team, but also just affirmation of who this team thinks they are and who many who have watched this team think they are. And Bruce Levine, who is one of the Stars radio analysts, if you listen to the radio for Stars games, intermission shows, post-game shows, things of that nature, you are familiar with Bruce and his work. He made an interesting tweet on Monday afternoon as well, like Josh Bogart, and he says, Toronto and Montreal visit Dallas this month. The Leafs play tomorrow, a.k.a. today. If Jason Robertson for the Hart or Miro for the Norris want to gain real traction, they have one last chance to impress 2 of the most influential media groups in the NHL. Yes, some media are more important than others. And then that's a really interesting tweet, and Bruce makes a really interesting point there. I complain, I know a lot about the lack of media attention that Dallas gets, and especially that Dallas's players get. You'll occasionally get some love for Robertson or Heiskanen or Jake Ottinger at the start of the season was getting a little bit of attention and love as well. But at the end of the day, as frustrating as it can be at times, I do have to admit, and I am very knowledgeable of the fact that Toronto and Montreal are in fact king of the NHL world, and those markets are the biggest hockey markets on the planet, and certainly within this league and within this continent of North America. And I mean, mainly focusing on this Toronto game, because that's the one at hand right now. The Toronto media will be at this game, they'll be watching this game, and it's, like Bruce said, a truly great chance for Dallas's best players to light up the score sheet and really show those guys that, you know, that they deserve some recognition. They deserve some credit for the level of hockey they've been playing so far this season. I know Heiskanen missed a little bit of time, hasn't been on the ice for every single game like Jason Robertson, but he's really started to gain some traction over the last few games and is really starting to play at the level that many thought he would this season. And so I'm really curious to see how Jason Robertson and Miro Heiskanen perform, as well as the entire team. But I know those two will probably have the biggest spotlight on them. And of course, you know, it for me personally would be great. I would love to witness Jason Robertson extending his point streak and a Stars win while Mitch Marner. I almost said John Tavares. I don't know why I got those guys mixed up, but it happens. But if Mitch Marner doesn't carry over his point streak, and the Maple Leafs lose this game, I would be very curious to see how different media outlets approach that game. I feel like the attention would be more, oh, Marner loses his point streak. Oh, but he set the new franchise record, but still a great story. And not as much attention would be going to Jason Robertson in Dallas for continuing his point streak and potentially being one game away from tying the franchise record that has not been touched or really been close to, by really many people on this team since the mid-1980s. And so I think it's a great opportunity for the Stars to try to gain a little bit of respect in some of the biggest hockey markets in the world, some of the biggest names in hockey media. And I'm also curious to see what the Stars do with their goalie situation. If I were to guess, Jake Ottinger probably gets the start in this game, but also would not be too surprised if we see Scott Wedgwood after a pretty good third period performance against the Wild on Sunday. Jake did have a rough game against the Wild a few days ago. But again, I talked about it on Monday's episode. Not all of those goals were his fault. Some of it was a lack of defense and himself being put in a bad position. A guy coming away on a breakaway, one-on-one on a shorthanded situation. I mean, that's just tough to bounce back from and takes quite a bit of your confidence. So we'll see who's in net for the Dallas Stars. I think that's going to play a huge role in this game. I think the top line for the Stars is going to have to come up big, but we're also going to need to see that depth come up and play a huge role and take advantage of the holes on that Toronto blue line. That defensive core is a little spread thin right now. And if we can see the guys on the third line step up, we can see Wyatt Johnston, Jamie Benn, and Ty Dellandrea get involved. I think that will be huge for this Stars team. And if we can see Mason Marchment and Tyler Seguin get some things going, I I think if we can get all four lines buzzing, I mean, that's when the Stars are truly at their best, when all four lines are stringing together good shifts, and it just looks like it's one cohesive team, and you really can't tell when the lines change just because the level of play and the quality of play doesn't really fluctuate or change based on who's on the ice. But I think the Stars have what it takes to win this game. I'm going to go with them in this game, and just because of the stakes of the point streaks, I'm going to go with Jason Robertson getting the goal scoring started for the Stars in this game. Should be a highly entertaining game. Hopefully no comeback required. If it is going to be high scoring, hopefully it's a shootout with teams exchanging blows, the leads never really reaching farther than 1 or 2 goals. But hopefully the Stars don't have to do any dramatic comebacks, and they can get a resounding and maybe somewhat dominant win over a very good Toronto Maple Leafs team. But that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Stars. Thank you again for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day. Be sure to subscribe if you're watching on YouTube and follow us on your favorite podcasting platform. And you can leave us a 5-star rating or review if you like what you hear on audio only on Spotify and Apple. Be sure to tune in tomorrow as we'll be recapping and reacting to this game. Hopefully we'll be reacting to a Stars win and an extension of Jason Robertson's point streak. But I hope you guys enjoy your Tuesday. If you're going to the game, have fun, be loud, bring the energy. Should maybe even feel a little bit like a playoff game in the AAC on Tuesday night. Should be a fun atmosphere. Very excited to watch this one unfold, but I hope you guys enjoy it, and we'll see you back here tomorrow.